So yeah, today I want to just talk about, we won't finish these slides, but I want to talk about computer science and other disciplines because not every one of us in this room is a computer science major, right? I can't convince you all to switch majors. How does it apply to you? I mean, you're taking this class to get GE credit, I'm sure, and you're learning critical thinking skills that will be applicable to anything. But you're also learning some computer science specific things, and let's see how far that goes, how far that can get you in the field that you're choosing. Okay, so yeah, that's kind of the topic of today. Not the world's longest lecture, I don't think. Yeah, because the answer to this question is a resounding no, right? Not everybody's just making a bunch of programs that move turtles around on the screen every day. Yeah, even though that would be nice, I wish I could do that all day. It's fun when I get to do it with you guys. But no, people are making websites, they're making apps, they're making AI chatbots, cool stuff. There's more to it than what you're seeing in this class. This is just the beginning. Okay, so yeah, let's talk about some fields that don't really get associated with computer science all that much. So social science and art. Hopefully, we know what those fields are. So I just want to start off with a question. Let's get into peer instruction groups at the beginning today, and I'd like you to just take a few minutes. We got plenty of time today, but use Google if you need to, but write down some examples of people using computer science, like what programs are being used, or people learning how to program themselves, are they using some app that everybody uses in the field? What is computer science given to the fields of social science and art? Okay, does that question make sense? Photoshop would be one example, but there's plenty more where that came from. So you tell me. There's some good ideas here, good thoughts. So please go to the Written Nice page. I'll clear it out. And just as a group, if you could please write down some examples. Where is computer science being used? Where are computers being used? What apps are involved in the fields of social science and art? Maybe we know a decent amount. Teach your neighbors. We got plenty of time. The main goal today is to convince you to remember. For example, digital artists might use Photoshop. Just answering the question on the Written Nice page. You can get with a group if you'd like. There's a lot of hardcore statistics being done in social sciences, right? Are there any programs we know of that people are using there? Computer science things. So yeah, feel free to Google it. I'll give you a couple more minutes and then we'll talk about it. bad. Almost 100 days. A few more seconds to get your ideas in there. You might think that there's not a lot, but of course there is. That was unreasonably loud. Alright, well, let's see what we found. What are some ideas? Yeah, in addition to art, like, you've got a subfield of, like, you're making videos, yeah? Moving pictures. That's definitely a subfield of art. Producing movies, editing them. There's some hardcore editing software that people can't agree on which is the best, right? And that's made by computer scientists. They're trained in terms of programming, and then everybody goes off and they use those apps. That's pretty cool. And then just like, yeah, AI in general. Computers are now capable of creating art to maybe, hopefully, help artists that are trying to work on stuff, right? Give them ideas, give them a starting point. Writing essays for students, unfortunately, that maybe is art, but not a good kind, in my opinion. Yeah, AI is a huge thing. It's like breaking its way into a bunch of different fields, and so that's a great answer there. It'll just keep getting worse, I'm sure, but that's a good one. Yeah, audio as well. Good. I think I have that in mind as well. So, music is art. Yeah, you've got lots of cool apps. I know Logic Pro is one that I'm familiar with, at least, that helps you like record and mix your own music. People are using that. They're learning it, and there's a bunch of different algorithms deep down that give you the sounds that you're trying to get at, which is awesome. 3D design, which is very cool. Computational politics is something I haven't heard of before, but it makes sense. You use some. I can imagine what it means, right? People are using statistics all the time to make predictions. Like, computers are in the backbone of everything these days, right? So that's kind of what I'm trying to get at here, and convince you of that it's a field worth learning, regardless of whatever your major is. So yeah, let's see what we got. Photoshop, Microsoft Paint, of course. Why not? Everybody uses that. AI art, yeah. So yeah, I'd consider social science to have video games in it, stuff like that. Yeah, just everybody's using Zoom these days for any discipline, and yeah, all this stuff. It's made by a programmer somewhere, maybe with domain knowledge of that specific field. So it's good to learn a little bit of programming like you're learning in this class. All right, yeah, more AI ideas. So good. All that fun stuff. Photos, videos, movies, moving pictures, still pictures, music. There's apps at the backbone of all of that these days. Not just tapes anymore, right? So yeah, good responses. Thank you for those. Please do attendance, but because by the time I give you your next question, I'll stop this. So please do that if you haven't done it yet. But yeah, those are great ideas, great thoughts. So I just have a few that I want to talk about, but you mentioned most of the ones that I have in my slides here. So one big one that I would consider to be social science is computational linguistics. We've talked about this a little bit. This is like when you're using computers to speak human languages, to speak English, maybe to do translation, maybe to understand what you want, stuff like that. All right, so that's computational linguistics in general. It's a cool idea. It's like speech recognition, that's part of it. Speech synthesis, even having a computer speak back to you. That was a very hard topic a couple decades ago, and we're doing pretty well now. So that's a really nice thing that people with disabilities now have the ability to use. It's really cool. And a subfield of computational linguistics is natural language processing, and that's one we have talked about a lot. before. All right, so that's just like taking human text as input and doing something with it. Like we talked about using it to scour Twitter for mean-sounding tweets, but this is used everywhere, right? And so a fun quote is that the ultimate objective of NLP is to read, NLP for natural language processing for short, is to read, decipher, understand, and make sense of the human languages in a manner that is valuable. So it's a very vague idea, and there's a lot of ways that it could be used. So like a AI chatbot, so ChatGPT, or these pre-ChatGPT things where like you ask questions and usually they can get at what you want. That's all computational linguistics at the backbone, and that is useful in any field, right? You have a bunch of knowledge that you want to extract or use to help people. Computational linguistics is where it's at. So before ChatGPT was all the rage, like people were talking to Alexa and Siri and Google, whatever it's called. So let's talk about how that works, right? Because that's deep down, there's similarities to that in AI, so it's like a different kind of AI. But here's what natural language processing is doing when you talk to like Siri on your phone. You say, "Hey Siri, do something for me." Okay, it's like there's a big step, a bunch of big steps that are involved here that just seem so simple now that we've had these in our life. But like the second you say to your phone, "Hey Siri, set a timer for 5 minutes," it's kind of magical how much processing has to go on and get this to work for you. Then it just all works seamlessly. So the very first step for NLP is like taking this voice and translating it to text, right? Because your sound waves have no meaning inside of a computer. Does that make sense? Like that's a huge step. That's done using machine learning, using natural language processing, using computational linguistics. Like text. You need the voice, your sound, your voice saying this into text saying this. That's a big step, taking someone's voice, because maybe there's a lot of accents. There's a bunch of different regional accents for English, for example, and many other languages are similar in that regard. So you have to go from somebody's potentially accent-heavy English to the text of what they're trying to get at. That's important. I guess I didn't draw the quotes there. So that's a big step. All at first. That needs to happen first for sure. Okay? And then now that you have text, like separated by words, you have to extract meaning from it. That's what Siri is doing next after it gets your text. It's like, okay, what did this voice to text thing mean now? All right? So first of all, it needs to wake itself up. I don't have this feature turned on, but like the two words, "Hey Siri," that's like an activation. Those need to be at the start, right? Assuming you turn on your phone in that way. Activation. That setting on. So that tells Siri to wake up, like, okay, I've been listening to your voice this whole time. Okay, now I know that you want to tell me something. And then it starts looking at the rest of your sentence until you pause. Right? So that's another thing that has to be taken into account. This is all a program that somebody wrote somewhere. It's really cool. A lot of machine learning involved here for sure. And then it's like it's got the rest of the sentence and it needs to know what you want. So there is some sort of computational linguistics tool that's taking this text and breaking it down into like the subject, the verb, and the object, that kind of stuff that you did in grade school. Oh, that's a verb. And then it has to parse the rest of the sentence regarding that verb. It's like, all right, what am I setting? Set a timer. Okay, that's the object of the verb. It has to figure all that out. It's very important. And so this could be done with AI. It could be done with other tools, but somebody wrote them somewhere. And then like this is modifying the setting of the timer. This is like a duration. And it's got to parse all those. It's got to figure out what you want. And so it's just not obvious how to write a program that would do this, right? There's a bunch of studies. It's a huge field of study. Lots of research being done actively on this kind of stuff. But then it's got all the things, all the pieces, like, all right, set. What am I setting? I'm setting a timer. Okay, I, as Siri, know how to do that. Only thing I need to know is how long to set the timer for. That will do everything. Then I'm ready to do it. Okay, for 5 minutes. And so then it goes off and does that thing. So from your voice, from your sound waves, just your voice, all the way to text, all the way to what you wanted. There's a lot going on. It's pretty cool. Have we ever thought about all the pieces that are in play there? It's pretty nice to have them all work together so seamlessly these days. So yeah, somebody's writing this code somewhere. Could be you one day. Okay. Another field that I would consider like potentially a combination of social science and art would be human-computer interaction. This is a field of study that you could go into. It's where you're trying to work on the interfaces between humans and computers, right? And some of those interfaces work for other things, like you've seen cats playing iPad games meant for humans. Some interfaces span species boundaries, but yeah, you have human-computer interaction researchers to thank for the way computers work today. The way it just all is so seamless and nice. Because back in the day, every computer looked like this. It's just a big screen with a bunch of text. And it's like you could tell it what you wanted, and like it would do those things for you. Like, I don't know. You have to go through, really? Like you just scroll through your text and you tell it what you want to do. So like that was what computers used to be. Okay, so that was the first thing. And then human-computer interaction researchers got started. It's like, this is what computers used to look like. We've come so far since then. Right now, that turned into just like Windows and using a mouse. Surprisingly, if you didn't know, it's a fun story to look up the history of all this. But like then we got to Windows and separate things on the screen at once, separate programs running at the same time. It's magical, right? So how do you interact with them all? It's a lot of things. So like the mouse had to get invented. It was invented by a copier company, surprisingly, if you haven't heard that story. It was invented by Xerox. They had a lot of R&D money, and they made the first graphical user interface with Windows and movable things. And then they just didn't want to spend enough money on it to actually make a full computer, and so they gave their ideas to Apple, and they started this. And then like Microsoft stole it, and it's a fun story. I encourage you to look into it. So yeah, that's what happened there. And then nowadays, like we're trying to move past this. Like Apple has a new product, like you have the Oculus out, all that fun stuff. You got VR, virtual reality, and augmented reality as well. Like using your phone to do Pokemon Go, for example. It's like augmented reality. So like maybe that's the future. Who knows? But like you have to figure out how am I going to use the computer? How am I going to interact with it with my hands? Right? That's the kind of problems that virtual reality, augmented reality people are trying to figure out these days. Okay? And so like think about it. Like what has to be studied? What do you have to figure out? What kind of programs do you have to write? Like if you're going to play Pokemon Go, for example, what are you going to do? Well, if you're using your camera, right? Your camera's out there, and you have to like keep the Pokemon in the same spot. So it needs to notice like where is the horizon line. It's got to figure that out. There's machine learning involved there. There's fancy programs involved there. Where's the horizon? It's got to find that. Is the ground flat? It's like where is the ground? Like here's the ground. It's got to like draw a little checkerboard and figure out where it is because that's where it's going to put its Pokemons. Okay, so that's very interesting, right? And then when you turn the camera, it's got to realize that like, oh, you're not in the same spot anymore. All that kind of processing has to happen in order to have some sort of augmented reality app being run. So that's a lot of computational effort. It's a lot of thought for the computer. And somebody wrote this. Maybe you could write the next one. That's human-computer interaction. It's a very interesting field of study that you wouldn't expect. But yeah, people are trying to make the best way to interact with a computer, and that's still an unsolved problem. Right? Always be better. So these are just a bunch of little examples. If you have any questions, just shout them out. Any comments? But yeah, see, these are some ideas that you guys already wrote. So like music production, if you're trying to make music, everybody's going digital these days. Like nobody's using tape decks anymore to do their recordings. That's well in the past these days. And like electronic music, for example, is based using hardware, right? Computer chips and software and hardware. So like Yamaha back in 1974 apparently was the first digital synthesizer. And so like that wouldn't have existed before transistors, right? Before you had small enough computers to fit into a keyboard. And so you got a bunch of little apps like Logic Pro, Ableton Live, all these fun things that allow you to like mix your own music, make your own beats and things like that. It's really, really exciting. And then you have people working on this, programmers who understand music and programming, right? That could be you maybe. I'm just showing you your options, right? And so like there's some cool software. Like I'm a guitarist, or I like to pretend that I know a little bit about how to play guitar at least. So like there's software that like you can plug your guitar into your computer, and it will sound like the world's most expensive tube amp that you could never afford. It's great. So this is the kind of thing that people are doing these days. And when you're recording, of course, that's kind of what's happening. You're getting all those things in the studio for free, right? They've used machine learning to make their amps sound like the real amps, their virtual ones. So that's near and dear to my heart. That's the kind of thing people are writing code for. It's not just turtles all day. It's like legitimate things that don't have to do with just hardcore computer science. And then finally, of course, in this field, we got digital art. You've got movies. You've got video game art. You've got digital image stuff with Photoshop. So, like, I found a fun quote on the internet somewhere, and somebody said, like, the best composers of our time are probably writing music for movies, right? Because that's where the money is. Like, Beethoven, if he was alive today, would probably be making movie music because that's what everybody's going to go and buy. That's where your concertos live these days. And then somebody then went and said, like, the best artists of our time are probably painting digitally in Photoshop because that's where the money is. So, yeah, there's just a bunch of very talented people working on digital art, and this is kind of why I gave you that that question about art on your next essay. So, yeah, it's just like where the money is, it's where how you reach the most people. And so that's two-dimensional art. That's totally a thing people are doing these days. Concept art for video games, for example. That's another digital thing. There's also 3D art, right? 3D artwork for movies, video games. People are using open source software like Blender, if you've heard of that, to design models for characters and things like that. I've used Blender a little bit to make some fun things to 3D print. So it's like, it allows you to like sculpt with virtual clay on a computer. It's really fancy. So that is another piece of software that somebody had to write and get good enough to be used by a bunch of people. And like maybe if you have art skills plus programming skills, you could that could be your niche. It's really cool ideas. So there's more to computer science than just like writing programs to draw squares all day. But it is fun to do. So that's social science and art. Any questions, comments about that? Just trying to show you the options, show you what's going on in the field these days. So it's like these are like the softer sciences. Let's talk about the harder sciences now. So like, where are computer science topics? Where are programs being used in the medical fields? In the harder sciences like chemistry, physics, things like that. This might be an easier question to ask and to answer it as well. Okay, so same idea. You can, if you'd like to, go back to the written ice page. Well, definitely go back to the written ice page. If you'd like to, you can just like, if you have the thing open, you can edit your own stuff if you'd like, or you could post a new one. I'll just look at the bottom too. Whatever you'd like. I'll keep these ones up there. But with your group this time, I'll give you a few minutes to write down some examples of computer science being used in medicine and science, those fields. I think there's quite a few things you could write down there, so see if you can get some ideas there. Okay? Let's see what you're thinking. We got plenty of time. So please discuss with your neighbors. All right. A few more seconds. Maybe another minute or so. Then we'll take a look and see what you found. I guess the 25 machine is one option, and all of its successors. All right. Let's take a look. Sorry, I was answering a Discord question. I just finished it in time. So yeah, what do we find? I can think of like cancer stuff. It's like any kind of lab test that involves like DNA, all that fun stuff. So yeah, nice. Let's take a look here. Uh, Dun dun dun. Simulations. Very good. Testing new medications. I do have some slides on that. That's a very good thought. That's a very, very powerful idea. Like all the COVID vaccines and stuff, right? They're making 3D virtual models of these things, trying to figure out how they're going to interact with the proteins that live inside of us. It's really, really cool stuff. All right, let's see. Dun, dun, dun. Very good. I love this. So these are good ideas. Like you've got people designing stuff in AutoCAD all the time, doing MATLAB can do AI stuff, which is interesting. Statistical analysis in general, like you're trying to figure out in most sciences whether your stuff is better than somebody else's stuff. That's how research works, right? And so you need some sort of statistical analysis to go along with it. There's all that happening. Let's see. MRI machines, awesome. IV infusers, yeah. Like just imagine back in the day before computers, if you needed to give somebody medicine, like the IV drips, for example, with actual medicine on it, like you would have to administer it. A human would have to go and administer that all the time. But now it's virtual. You can save time for the nurses so that they can do better things, more important stuff. So that's awesome. Fun things. So let's see what else. What we got? Yeah, record keeping. That's another big one. It's like medical records. Those are all digital now, right? If I interact with my doctor, he's going to send me an email. He's not going to send me a letter or anything like that. Everything's virtual. Sending prescriptions as a doctor, completely virtual these days. Nobody's giving you like a piece of paper anymore, for the most part. Yeah, pagers. I love it. So yeah, I think you guys get the idea. Maybe we're more. I think the makeup of this class, if what I remember was true, it's like we're more science heavy in this class already. It's like we have these ideas in our mind, for sure. But yeah, all these 3D programs to help design things like AutoCAD from before. Good. Simulations. Great ideas. Yeah. Just all these machines from before, like X-ray machines existed before, but like it takes a lot less effort nowadays. Okay? Yeah. Just like computers can help you do all these things that doctors might have done that now it's going to be a little bit more precise. So great. Drug development, very good. Just like there's specialized software that hospitals are using. That's something that you could work on if that's interesting to you. If like you're interested in that combination. Hospitals are always hiring computer scientists, believe it or not. Let's see. Yeah, artificial intelligence to help diagnose diseases, models to predict. Like maybe one day, there's going to be an AI model. There's going to be a ChatGPT for doctors that helps you like give symptoms and help do a differential diagnosis. So cool stuff. Yeah. So let's see. Heart rate diseases. Yeah, disease checking in general, like DNA analysis, that kind of stuff. You need computers for that, for sure. So good, yeah. We can do stuff. One thing that we didn't mention for like physics is like a science. Like we're doing all these, we're colliding particles, right? That's all definitely using computers to measure and figure out how fast to send these particles going off and into underneath Switzerland or wherever. So Fun stuff. Cool ideas. So thank you for taking the time to write that down and to do a little bit of extra research. But yeah, I just got a bunch of examples, and that'll be it for the day. So let's talk about the weather. I don't know if any of you gave that idea, but like the weather is something I pay attention to. It's getting a lot hotter now, which is unfortunate. But like weather forecasts back in the day, they were horrible. But nowadays we have better simulations, more processing power to get more or less better forecasts. Still it sometimes lies to us, but like the setup is like you can model the atmosphere, right? What is a weather app? All it's trying to do is like it's trying to model the atmosphere using fluid dynamics and thermodynamics equations. You can make predictions. It's like you got a bunch of sensors, right? So like here is time A, like now or something, time A. You got a bunch of sensors all over Fresno. Like just imagine that we're going to take a rectangular prism chunk of air. Like this is Fresno's air or whatever. And we've got a bunch of sensors all over town, right? And there's plenty more across the country. So like all these sensors for like humidity, temperature, wind speed, direction for the wind as well. All that kind of stuff that you want to measure about the environment. You can get that data. And then the goal of forecasting is, right, where the clouds, is to like take that same chunk and figure out, all right, what's going to be true at time B for all those little stations, and then extrapolate what's going on in between as well. That's pretty much all weather forecasting is if you break it down, right? So yeah, with enough sensors and fast enough computers, you can make pretty accurate predictions up to like a week or so out these days. But the farther into the future you try to predict, at least right now, the more like you don't have all the sensors in the world right now. You don't have sensors in the middle of the Pacific Ocean for the most part. You don't have a lot at least. So like the more like the statistics are like you don't know what's happening. There's more randomness that's possible, the butterfly effect, and so the weather gets a little less precise if you try to go 2 weeks or more out into the future. Okay, but yeah, the answer it's not the weather person's fault ever. It's their computers. They need better computers. So that's kind of what's going on. You're doing a bunch of very hardcore statistical / physical equations, and you're trying to solve them as quick as possible to determine like where's the rain gonna go, where's the heat gonna go, the high pressure, the low pressure systems, whatever they're called. Yeah. So that's a fun little thing that you could think about. That's definitely an area of study. Something that's also near and dear to our hearts in the Fresno area is air quality, right? That's another forecast, right? It's another piece of weather. Similar concept, like you can, like what is the air quality now? What are the wind speeds? It's a machine learning model. Learn what's going to happen with the stuff that we know about. Like the wind's blowing this way, the air quality is this right now. What should it be tomorrow? Stuff like that. Similar concept. Back when there were those huge wildfires, if you guys remember, if you're ever looking at the air quality websites like I was during that time, it was way off. It was like the air quality is going to be like 100 times worse than it was yesterday or something because the models that the air quality predictors were trained on had not seen a wildfire that big before. It was huge. It was like unprecedented. So computers are trying to make predictions based on what they've seen. Or like my PG&E bill is like you're going to spend 100 times what you spent last month or something because it's trying to make predictions based on what it's seen before, and it's not usually going to be right, but when things are unprecedented. Okay, so that's the idea. And then similarly, like air quality and wildfires, they go hand in hand around here. So like wildfire simulations are a thing. Like the fire departments, the forest service, all that fun stuff. They can model like where the fire is right now. They have sensors with the weather, trying to predict. Okay, the wind's going to blow this way, so we think the fire is going to spread to here by tomorrow, and maybe also with a little bit of wind over here, it's going to spread over this way by tomorrow, and so they can focus their efforts. Right? It's another thing that is very important around here. So you can use machine learning, for example, to predict fire behavior, do a kind of forecast for a fire to have a good chance at getting it out in time and saving lives and property. So it's very important stuff that you don't think about. Like computer science is at the backbone of all this. So That's why I have this lecture, even though once I say it, it's probably obvious, but maybe we haven't thought of it. So next comes genome sequencing. Let's talk about that. So have any of us used like the 23andMe kind of DNA test? I still haven't done it yet. Like you spit in the little bottle and like you send that off, and it tells you like fun stuff about yourself. But that is a huge, relatively recent success. Okay, so like computers are able to these days completely sequence human DNA. The first time we did that back in 2007, everybody was going crazy. It's like that's a huge achievement to like get the entire genome of a human. It's like take your DNA in some way, that big strand, and turn it into the A's, the T's, the C's, and the G's, whatever they are, on and on forever. We have that for humans now, and this is relatively recent, that kind of technology, which is really cool. And like it's a good combination of engineering and computer science because you got to make the systems, the hardware as well. So it's fun stuff. So that's a thing we can do nowadays. We can get your entire DNA if you want to spend a lot of money. You also have smaller companies popping up that do similar things but not as hardcore. You have 23andMe, for example, that they initially started testing you for ancestry, like where is your ancestry from, like because they got a bunch of samples of people from places, and like they're trying to match you based on that. They also started in 2007, surprisingly, but it doesn't take as much computational effort to like do check for ancestry. It's not like taking your entire DNA; it's like checking for matches. Okay, so what 23andMe is doing, like, is they're not sequencing your whole genome, not all of your DNA. Rather, it's taking your DNA sample that you give to them. Like here's your DNA sample that they take from you that you send in. And what they're doing is they have some software plus hardware that searches for little strands that mean something. Like this little strand means like here's a map or something. Like if that strand matches your DNA right there, it's like here's a map of, that's my best drawing of Italy and Spain and France, and like here's the UK, here's Africa, and so they got a bunch of different samples from people. And they're like, all right, if this strand matches right here, that means you are from Northern Africa in your descent. You have a piece of you from there, for example. And so they got all this data, and like they know this kind of stuff. They've got a bunch of samples, and that's what they're looking for. Like this, if you have this strand here, that means you're like Western European in descent, whatever, stuff like that. So they started doing that kind of testing for ancestry. They also now test for disease risk, because that's another genetic thing, genetic diseases. You can check for like, okay, if this strand matches here, this thing that I know about, if I can find a match, that means that you're more likely to have this disease. You're at higher risk for it, and so that's really helpful for people's health. That's really cool, and it's easier to search for small pieces of DNA in a bigger one rather than like sequencing the whole thing. That's why they both started in the same year, and like 23andMe, it's a bit cheaper for sure, right? Several orders of magnitude cheaper. But yeah, it's a fun idea. I don't know if I'll ever try it anytime soon, but it's a cool thought. All right, what else do I have to talk about today? Let's talk about robots. Some more hardware involved. So this is an image that I took from a 2015 article. So this kind of idea is relatively recent. We've gotten good at it. Making robotic appendages for somebody who's had an amputation, for example. So back in 2019, so relatively recently, we had some really cool success with making a non-invasive robotic arm, which is really cool. So I need to teach you the difference, because I didn't know the difference between prosthetic arms and robotic arms, because there's a big difference apparently, and I did not know this difference. I'm going to pass my knowledge on to you now. So I stole this from an article, but I'm not a biologist, by the way, but here's my explanation of this. And so there's really cool ideas, machine learning involved with what I'm about to tell you, but like if you have an undamaged body, you think about moving, right? You think about moving your arm, for example, like the thought happens here, that travels to somewhere else, like motor cortex or something. Yeah. The motor cortex is where you, like that thought of I want to move translates into, all right, here's the arm, I'm going to send the signal to the arm now from here, and that's going to eventually do the movement. Right? So it's like you're thinking about moving the arm, and then there's another place in your brain that actually does the movement of the arm. Okay, that's what happens in an undamaged body. Some people have a working spinal cord and stuff. If they have their arm amputated, they still have the circuitry working. They still have the ability to send signals down to where the arm used to be. And so that's what a prosthetic arm means. If you have a prosthetic arm, that means you could hook into the electrical impulses near where the amputation site was. All right, and then that can be used. Those impulses can be used to move the prosthetic limb. So that's really cool. And what I want to tell you about is robotic appendages. All right, so robotic arms are different from prosthetic arms in that you have a damaged spinal cord when you need a robotic arm. That means you can't get the signal of I want to move my arm, for example, down to where the site is. Okay, even if you have the arm, for example, if you have a damaged spinal cord, you can't get that signal down to where it should have been, or as close as possible. And so what you have to do with the old version of robotic arms was you had to like install some sensors into your brain, right? That's where you need to read the signals from, because they're not getting translated where they need to go, because the spinal cord is not doing the right job. So that is a robotic arm, the old kind. You kind of had to like hook into the brain, and like that was producing some jerky movements. It wasn't doing very well. The new kind of 2019 version of robotic arm, and I'm sure they've made plenty of advances since then, is instead of hooking into the brain, like doing some surgery, putting some stuff there, they're just placing some things on the outside of the brain, outside of the skull. So just some sensors on top of somebody's head, like taped on, for example. So you can read the brain activity from there, and they got good enough results. So you don't have to like do any invasive surgery to install sensors in the brain itself. That's pretty cool. And that's the culmination of a lot of research, medicine plus software, right? Artificial intelligence for sure is learning how to read these signals from a brain. Everybody's brain is different. For example, you have to like train the machine learning on your specific brain waves, which is really cool to think about. If you've seen videos about that, I highly encourage it. Really cool ideas there. But yeah, that's something that people are working on. It's another recent advance in computer science. Not just turtles. Yeah, I got a couple more examples, and that'll be it. So let's talk about farms, because we're in an agricultural area of the state. So farmers have a lot of cool things they can use these days. Like farmers, they can put sensors all around their fields, right, that monitor the properties of their soils. Like here's the extent of your field as a farmer. You can, like from the comfort of your own home, have some sensors out here to just to like think about salt levels, water, hydration levels, stuff like that. You can install these sensors that monitor soil properties in a bunch of different places, and like that's being sent to your house. I don't know. Here's my best drawing of a house. And so like you're sitting in your house, and you're just like getting the sensor data from you because it's wireless. It's really cool. So you can have a whole like mesh network, for example, covering your farm and sending that data to you, so you can do statistical analyses and like figure out the best time to do your planting, when to rewater, etc., etc. It's really cool. So another fun thing is that self-driving is a solved problem for farmers, right? Because there are no road rules. There's nobody you're going to run over on your plot. So you can totally make a self-driving tractor super easily. Like that's a thing already, okay? That's a thing already. You just have to like tell, because the tractor will have a GPS device in it. It's got to tell it the extent of your farmland, and it'll just run. You can go to sleep. In the middle of the night, your tractor can be running, plowing your land. Just really cool. So yeah, it's much easier to do that than a self-driving car, because you can't hit anybody, no traffic rules. You can make as many U-turns as you want, right, in your own plot of land because you own it. There's just like a well-defined boundary. Usually it's a square most of the time, right? And like the GPS keeps the tractor inside the plot, and nobody's going to get run over. It's fine. So that's awesome. That's in use these days. And then there's also like these sensors. If you install them, you can use statistical analyses, and the fancy buzzword is you can use big data technologies to make predictions about what to do next, like how to grow your crops better. Like you can make better predictions on when to water, when to add fertilization, add pesticides, blah blah blah. Okay. So farms are smarter these days thanks to computers, and so even with a very traditional sort of, I guess, field, we have computers taking over. It's really cool, right? Space, second to last example, very important, right? You can't get to space without computers. It's impossible. All of the technologies, right, that we have in space are thanks to computers. Right? So like telescopes, for example, we have telescopes both on Earth and in space. So like here is, what do you have to do if you have a telescope, right? You've got like, here's South America or something. Like if you have a telescope on a large mountain and you want to look at a star, you have to focus the telescope on it, right? And then as the Earth is spinning and the star is also moving, you have to keep it tracking. So you have to, like, there's programs that do that. It's really cool, right? So telescopes on Earth and in space, you have to like track things. And so you've got satellites as well that are like making sure that they're in orbit, sending out things. Like you have the new Space Telescope also doing the same thing. It's like maneuvering itself just to make sure it's going to look at the right thing. Okay, that's important. The rovers that we put on to different planets like Mars or the Moon, obviously controlled using radio waves interpreted by hardware and software to control the thing and actually take samples and do all that fun stuff. So space is like, computer science is a necessity for doing anything with space. So you want to work at NASA, good idea to understand some programming for sure. So yeah, those are just a bunch of examples. If you have any questions or comments, please speak up. That's what I want to get at today. And then for my last thing that I want to talk about, let's get into medicine again, because there's a really cool thing that has to do with machine learning. It's called protein folding. Have we heard of that term before? Protein folding. So it's a very cool idea. It's very nice, very useful. It's when you use machine learning. Protein folding means using machine learning to predict the structure of a protein. Now, again, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a chemist, but apparently what happens when you have proteins, they fold in weird shapes. So like a protein is made up of a bunch of amino acids chained together, right? You have your cells producing things. They're using your DNA to produce proteins. Like that's the recipe, right? And when you like, your cell has made this this protein thing, this chain of nucleic acids, then it winds up based on the order of the whatever they're called. What is it called? I forget the word already, sorry. I think it's nucleic acid, but I think there's more to it than that. But yeah, those things, they just like, okay, they fold up. And that folding creates some weird structure, and apparently that makes all the difference inside of your cells. Like if you want a protein to do something, do something in another part of the cell, it has to like fold up and mess with that other protein over there in the right way. So like there's a whole study of like how are these proteins going to wiggle up and like get into their weird shape that they need to get in to do like to meet the other protein that it's trying to mess with halfway. Okay, and that's telling you how it can interact with other proteins, which is really cool to think about. And so all medicine is like building the right proteins, more or less, to interact with bad things, to mess with them, and like get you better. So AlphaFold, I think it was Google who made this. There was a version 1 and a version 2 came out in 2020. There was like a competition of all the protein folding softwares, and like AlphaFold 2 blew them all out of the water in terms of accuracy. Like just given what the protein was made up of, it was able to predict the shape, how it would fold, which is really cool. And so like that's what you need to make medicine. So like the better you can predict the shape of a protein, the better you can understand how cells are going to work and interact with certain proteins that we already know exist, and then make medicines that target maybe proteins that we don't like that exist inside of certain bacteria, for example. So that is amazing, cool stuff, stuff that I'm not really super familiar with, but at least I can tell you a little bit about it. Okay, so yeah, if you're going into a field that is not hardcore, like we're making an app today, we're making a website today, just think, like all these disciplines are using computer science. for the better, I would say. So yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say today about all this. The last big thing I want to talk about, of course, is cryptocurrency, and we'll do that next time. Let's make sure there's nothing left for me to do today. So yeah, just want to give you a bunch of examples, and yeah, I want to give you an extra credit assignment, but I'll wait until Wednesday to do that. So that's all I got for you today.